In 2021, Riot Games released Arcane, a League of Legends story, to critical acclaim. I remember seeing it for the first time on Netflix and not being too interested at first, but it's a great thing I gave it a try because by episode 3, which I discussed in my last video, feel free to check that out whenever you have the chance, I knew this was gonna feed families for years to come. I was putting in work amongst my friend group, trying everything I could to spread the Arcane propaganda, to incredible success I might add. While I'm only one of many people who preached a good word, our efforts paid off tremendously because the amount of hype going into its second season was overwhelming. And now that it's over, that's all everyone's talking about. Arcane is getting the recognition it deserves and then some, so let's talk about it because after what I just watched, I'll be damned if I don't yap about it so you guys can check that shit out too. I just want to give a quick shout out to Ella Purnell, the voice actor for Jinx, who's been in 2 of my favorite shows this year and serves as evidence that people from the UK really just be faking those accents, but that's neither here nor there. After the dramatic cliffhanger we were left with in season 1, after all these years, we are finally given the conclusion to the incredible and heartbreaking story of Violet, Powder, and all the other characters in Piltover and Zaun that demanded our attention. Before we get into the video, I just want to thank you guys for getting me to 281 subscribers. It really does mean a lot to me, so if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and comment down below what you thought of this season because I've heard quite a few mixed opinions and I would love to hear yours. You know the drill by now. I won't talk about everything in this season, but be warned, there's spoilers ahead. The first season of Arcane was legitimately insane, and the ramifications of that fateful night were Jace, Victor, and Powder unlocked the power of those blue crystals to severely varying effect, have resonated throughout the series ever since. We got to witness Silco's meteoric rise using the power of Shimmer, nearly getting what he wanted before his tragic downfall at the hands of the person he loved most as Powder devolved further and further, suffering from the consequences of her actions. Vi and Echo having front row seats to the downfall of someone that they once held near and dear to their hearts. The entire city of Piltover experienced a renaissance using the power of the newly invented Hex Tech, the likes of which many other countries could only dream of and would do anything to obtain. Unfortunately, that renaissance begins to come to an end when Jinx finally snaps, unleashing a missile fueled by the very same gemstone behind the city's prosperity, unaliving several members of its esteemed council and escalating the conflict between Piltover and Zaun to levels that can no longer be contained. With everyone topside in a frenzy, this opens the door for Ambessa Medarda, Mel's mother and the very competent ruler of the country of Noxus, to sink her teeth into her weakened prey, placing her yet another step closer to her goal of achieving the power of Hex Tech for herself. That's not all. Turns out, Jinx's devastating attack on the council set several plot lines in motion. For example, Caitlyn, Vi's love interest from the first season, and the relatively sane and affluent parallel to Jinx, loses her mother in the bombing, setting her straight down the path for cold and jaded revenge, leading to her doing everything she can if it means she can get her hands on Jinx, no matter the cost and regardless of whoever stands in her way. Next, as a result of the bombing, Victor comes closer to death than ever, leading to his life needing to be saved by the power of the Hex Core, the unsettling fusion of Hex Tech and his own blood, resulting in a connection between him and the Arcane, and consequences no one in the series is prepared to face as they've tapped into powers that should never have been tampered with. Finally, after the bold statement made by landing a crippling blow to what a lot of Zaunites see as the object of their oppression, Jinx becomes a hero to the masses, garnering a loyal and radical following of those who are sick and tired of doing nothing, especially as the power vacuum left behind by Silco's death continues to cause tension between the leaders of Zaun's underworld. The craziest thing is, I'm really only scratching the surface. The series of events that unfold in season 2 of Arcane will legitimately blow your mind, and in an effort to explore just a taste of what that means, we'll need to have a serious conversation about my favorite part of any great show, the character. One of the best parts of the season, and a major reason Arcane was so successful in the first place, was the fact that its characters were so captivating. A trait that, for the most part, is upheld here in season 2, except this time, the stakes have been dialed up more than a few notches. We have Vi, freshly removed from watching her sister quite literally tear yet another family apart, questioning whether she's even worth saving anymore, only to be put in a situation where somehow the most reasonable option is joining the very organization that destroyed hers first, all the while having the weight of Vander's last words closely, reverberating throughout the remnants of her relationship with the sisters he's forced to contend with in Mortal Kombat, and having to leverage her ties to what may or may not be left of Powder with her relationship with Caitlyn, who's in the middle of a crisis of her own. In her understandable thirst for revenge, Caitlyn begins to ask herself just how far she's willing to go to spin the block for her moms, being enticed by the literal army being hand-delivered to her via a deal with the devil in Ambessa, masterfully conspiring for her conquest for devastating power. She has her own demons to contend with, relentless ones that remind her that that they're willing to chase her to the ends of the earth if it means getting their own revenge, and willing to get their hands on yet another member of her family to settle the score, a threat that Ambessa does not take lightly, fueling her ambition for power at any cost because, as she said herself,
I would set the world ablaze to protect our family.
Speaking of her family, following Jinx's attack and knowing the true nature of her mother all too well, Mel has to watch the civility and order she helped put together crumble before her very eyes as Ambessa, teeming with the very same guile that was instilled within herself, poisons the well of her colleagues in the council, using their pain and paranoia for her own benefit as Mel's options seemingly diminish before her very eyes. Her unique situation puts her directly in the middle of a crumbling society and a debt of blood that unravels details of her past that almost no one could have seen coming. As his lover faces her past, Jace must do the same, but where Mel's past ultimately has the potential to lead to the greater good, he's forced to confront the fact that his ambition as a shonen protagonist did not. In fact, he begins to learn that Heimerdinger may have been the one cooking all along. Tapping into the power of the Arcane may very well lead to consequences that the world may have to pay for, not just himself, and in more ways than one, and it's up to him to do something about it. Unfortunately, his partner Victor doesn't see it that way at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Where season 1 saw Victor experimenting with the hex core in an attempt to fix his legs, even coming at the expense of his beloved assistant Sky, the missile unleashed on the council by Jinx finally put him on the brink of death, leading to the core being used by Jace to sustain his life. Little did they both know the hex core would do quite a bit more than that. With his new body and transcendent connection to the Arcane, Victor embarks on a not completely misguided journey to heal the residents of Zaun who are desperately in need of his help, at least at first. Unfortunately, like I mentioned before, both he and Jace have been playing with forces that should have never been tampered with, and as Arcane has told us time and time and again, actions have consequences. A sentiment that Heimerdinger was all too familiar with, and along with Echo, whose sanctuary has begun to get a glimpse of these consequences, do everything in their power and intelligence to prevent the problem from progressing any further. With Jace's help, Echo and Heimerdinger are forced to confront what could have been, all for the sake of putting an end to what shouldn't be, by any means necessary. If they're gonna have any hope of saving the world, Echo is not only gonna have to surpass his own limits, but time and space itself. Finally, we have Jinx, one of the roots of this whole ordeal, and someone who may very well be far beyond redemption. Her actions kickstarted this whole season, and to my surprise, those very same actions served as a rallying cry for those who have been oppressed by Piltover. Not only does she gain a companion who doesn't see her as a monster who's brought on so much destruction, she's also having to come to terms with the fact that there's so many others in Zaun who don't as well. She means something to them, and they depend on her, leading us to beg the question, is it really too late? As I was writing this script, Riot Games just put the word out that they're going to be releasing more shows from the captivating world of Runeterra, and I couldn't be more excited for what's to come. While I love this season of Arcane, it's not without its flaws. I've heard some pretty valid criticisms, the one resonating with me the most being the lack of payoff a few characters received, particularly with Loris, a character with an apparent resemblance to Vander, who developed a pretty close connection to Vi this season. In contrast, as much as I respect the way others feel about this show, there are people out here comparing this season to the final season of Game of Thrones, and that's where I draw the line, because you're kinda dragging it, but whatever. Season 2 of Arcane is not perfect, but it's still really f***ing amazing. It's a captivating story that delves into the lengths people will go to for love, possessing the same if not more impressive animation than the last time that can only come from a group of people passionate about what they do. The voice actors gave it their all, and the stakes were raised to catastrophic levels, and now that this story has come to an end, I can't wait to see what Riot Games has in store for us next time.